Hi guys, I'm Kasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times. Today was a day that I had marked on my calendar for the longest time because finally we started with the Fear Street movies. This trilogy is going to be released one movie per week on Netflix. So obviously today I made a priority to watch part 1 based in 1994 and I'm here to talk to you about it.
It's coffee time!
As you have probably noticed, I'm talking a little bit weird, but that is because if you follow me in other social media, you probably already know, but I had to go to the orthodontist to get Invisalign, which is kind of like braces. So I'm back in my teens. So in my case, because my problem is the bite, I don't have a proper bite anymore. They had to put extra attachments and buttons, so there's a lot going on right now, and I am slowly trying to get used to talking like a normal person again. The first 24 hours were the absolute worst, so I'm gonna try to talk slowly and enunciate for you guys, but I'm so sorry if this is a bother to you guys. I just didn't want to stop my content, my videos, just because of it, and I'm hoping that with time I'm gonna be able to talk a little bit better. So I am sorry if it bothers some of you guys, but I just didn't want to stop posting content for months until I get them removed, because I love to talk about movies with you guys and tell you my thoughts on the movies. So I hope that it's gonna get better when that the talking is gonna get better, and I hope it doesn't bother you guys too much. So with that being said, let's jump into the spoiler-free review of this movie. And as always, if you're new here, first of all, I'm sorry that your first video is me lisping and talking a little bit weird, but welcome to the coffee family. Please consider subscribing and also hit the notification bell before you leave. So I figured the best thing that I could do before we really start talking about this movie is to give you a little introduction on what these movies, this trilogy is based, which is the Fear Street books by R.L. Stine. The first book he published in this series was in 1989, and the last time that he revived this series was in 2014. Now, originally this trilogy of movies was supposed to come out in the cinema, but we all know what happened in 2020, and it might have been actually for the best that the trilogy ended up on Netflix. So in the book series, we are introduced to this town called Shadyside, and everything is supposed to be perfect except for one thing in this small town, and that is a curse that has been set upon it. So basically what happened is, many years ago somebody pissed off a witch, and since then there is this curse in a town that kind of turns teenagers insane. It kind of drives them to commit violent crimes against their will. So all the books actually are a different story, all based on Shadyside, and they all feature teenagers, and it is kind of like a connected universe. So you might see characters from one book just popping into another one later on in the series. So it is really cool. And it is definitely a series that I would like to reread from beginning to end, because I've only read like loose numbers here and there. The Fear Street trilogy, they are all three American slasher movies, all three of them directed by Lee Janiak, and as a fun fact, she is the wife of one of the Duffer brothers. I didn't know, and I thought it was a really fun fact because you can definitely see the influence a little bit in it, and of Stranger Things, of course. And also she already directed horror in the past. She directed Honeymoon and also the TV show Scream, so she knows her horror already. In 1994, a group of teenagers find out that the terrifying events that have occurred in their cursed town of Shadyside, Ohio may be connected to each other, and that they may be the next targets. The Shadyside Mall is closing for the day, and we see the character played by Maya Hawke, and she is closing the bookstore. She's selling one last book, and that is a Fear Street book called Wrong Number. And it's funny because they address the series as Tacky, the book series. And shortly after that, she sells a book called Wrong Number. She gets a very shady phone call, and that is how our movie starts. And that beginning, that first introduction to the movie, it was just for me such a throwback to Scream, the first Scream movie. I don't know what it was. There was something about the way those scenes were planned at the beginning that it took me back to Scream. The 90s atmosphere of the mall closing down, the colors, they were vibrant electric colors combined with the darkness of the night. I thought it was fantastic. I absolutely loved the color palette throughout the whole movie, and I think the fact that Netflix purchased these movies and they were not produced by Netflix is giving us a trilogy. Hopefully all of them are the same, that it is above average for the production values that we normally get from Netflix movies. After that introduction to the movie in the Shady Side Mall, we get the opening credits, and those credits are showing you articles and pictures of things that have happened in Shady Side that have marked and scarred this town through time, and it's going to provide us with a glimpse of all the things that we maybe get to see in the next two installments of the trilogy, but also some of the things, some of these paper clippings are going to be important for our story that takes place in 1994. First and foremost, I would also like to say that the soundtrack of this movie is fantastic. Towards the beginning, after the opening credits, we get to hear the song Fear of the Dark by Iron Maiden, and it just made me so happy. Like, the soundtrack in this movie is spot on, especially if you're somebody that love that nostalgia of those bands and their good years. So definitely a big fan of the soundtrack. So in our story, we follow some teenagers that are going through the history of the town of Shady Side, and they are discovering some crimes, some murders that happened, and they all seem to be connected. All point out that there is a very angry dead witch that is coming back for revenge every X years. I really loved how organically they introduced the topic of the witch. Like, they brought this supernatural element to the story in such a normal way that I really enjoyed it. It was super believable, and you know, I was on board and I was ready to find out more about the background of this town. In this movie, we are introduced to different types of the town and the people that live in there, the high school, their rivalries, how the community is, and I love to see so many different aspects of it, as well as the mall that we saw at the beginning that I absolutely loved. For being such a long movie, it is nearly 2 hours long. I think it was 1 hour and 47 minutes. The pacing was really good because you're getting a lot of action, a lot of killings and violent scenes, but in between there's a lot of breaks for more character development, and the movie never really gets boring. And I really appreciated that they did such a good job with the pacing, because movies nowadays, I feel like they're trying to make them sometimes way longer than they have to be, but I did not have the feeling with this one. However, we do have many tropes, many teenager cliches that you see in this type of movies. You know, we see cheesy love stories, we have kind of witty humor, we have police not believing teenagers, we have rivalries between teenagers and their sport teams and things like that. So there are many of those tropes, but let's not forget that these movies are aimed to teenagers as well as the books were. I really do like that the characters were struggling to find a solution to the problems that they were being confronted with, that nothing felt too easy. I mean, predictable, of course, a little bit, because we as adults, when we see movies like this, and after watching so much horror as most of us have, some things you can already predict that are coming. However, I do think that this movie did a really good job when it came to make it believable. The characters were struggling, they thought they had found out a solution, but maybe that was not the solution. So I like that it was not like one of those movies where They find out exactly what they have to do right away without any kind of investigation, and problem solved. I have to admit that when it comes to the violence and the blood and the gore, I was really pleasantly surprised. I knew that this was an R-rated movie, but I did not expect some of these scenes that we get to see towards the end. No spoilers here, but the movie starts being bloody with kills, but towards the end we really get to see some nice gore that I did not expect, and I absolutely loved it. So I'm really glad that they really went all out and they didn't decide to make this trilogy more family friendly, and they really used the R rating that they had. Also, there is many pop culture references and horror references, one of them being Jaws, so I thought it would be appropriate to wear this t-shirt today. And of course, for people of my generation, it is great to see that we all understand that. There is also mention of Skeletor, you know, so there is something for every generation in this movie, and I absolutely love that. And this is a movie that maybe not family friendly, not for kids, but that teenagers can watch with their parents, and both of them are gonna get something from this movie. In the end, this movie was a great throwback slasher, with good killings, with good characters, and I really appreciated that the director took the characters seriously. Most times in slasher movies, the characters are just there to be killed. They're not taken seriously. It's kind of, you know, it goes more towards silliness sometimes. And I really appreciated that the director took the story and the characters seriously, and they all had an important role in the movie. We get to see a character exploration of all of them. They all have their own drama, their own problems. They are teenagers, of course. Some of their problems are gonna be superficial, but there is also a lot of drama, a lot of more in-depth character development in this movie that I expected, especially, you know, being a teenager movie. And I really appreciate it. I think it really helps for me, at least as a viewer, if I can really connect to the characters, if I can get to understand them a little bit better, if I actually care if they live or they die, it kind of helps me to be more invested with the movie. I ended up giving this movie 3 out of 5. Now, this movie was not perfect, but it does have all the needed elements for a supernatural slasher teenager movie. It had really solid world building, which I think is going to be really important. Also, taking into consideration that we're going to go back in time for 2 more movies. It had queer representation, which I think is super important. There is no 90s movie that would have had this type of queer representation, and I love to see it. And it had an amazing soundtrack as well. I love the killings. I think they really used that R rating, and I think that this movie was, at the end of the day, a lot of fun. You could kind of say that this movie is a little bit along the lines of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. However, that movie was PG-13 and this one is R-rated, so I definitely love this one a lot more because it gave me all the blood splatter that I need when I'm watching horror. Don't get me wrong, I love PG-13 movies. I love movies with creatures and huntings without blood as well. But there's something really satisfying about slashers, that they are kind of a comfort for me. So especially now that my mood has been sinking the last couple of days because I'm basically physically and mentally exhausted after going to the orthodontist, this has been an amazing escape for me. Alright you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this spoiler-free movie review. I hope that you and we all get used to this new way of talking. I really hope it's going to get better. It's still the first week, so they told me it might take a couple of weeks for me to really be able to speak a little bit better. But I hope that you guys were able to understand me. I hope it was not too annoying. Anyways, let me know down below if you've checked out the first movie already, if you're excited, if you've read the books as well, what your thoughts have been on this first movie. Let's talk about it in the comments down below. I myself am really excited for next week. I'll be uploading the next review next Friday as well. Thank you guys so much as always for all your support, and give the video a big thumbs up to help me with the YouTube algorithm, and I hope to see you all guys as always in our next coffee time. Bye.